We're really excited to see everybody joining in with us. Tonight, we're going to be discussing our 2017 Tempranillo Reserve. So if you've got that one in your glass, you're on the right track. We're doing a red wine tonight. I've had some of this already, and it's really tasting fantastic. It smells incredible. I'm really excited to listen to everybody, all of the discussion. So tonight we've got Dr. Richard Becker again, our owner and proprietor, and also Jon Leahy, our winemaker. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Becker and Jon, and they're going to get you guys all started. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, Doc, how's it going?
It's good, Jon. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Why don't you introduce us to the evening, and then we'll talk about the wine.
Well, I wanted to just for a moment make everyone aware who's watching us, how much feeling we have for the people that are fighting in the front lines in the war against this coronavirus, and just know that they're very much in our hearts and prayers and thoughts, and maybe a few lighthearted moments about wine and tasting wine and pairing wine and food won't be completely out of line, but just to know how much we care about them and think about them.
Absolutely. I think that's very well stated. We are very appreciative of everyone who is helping us through this. And with that, we would like to help you through this evening, maybe take a break and a little semblance of, if not normalcy, at least a little mental health break for you. So tonight we have the 2017 Reserve Tempranillo. It comes in this bottle. If that's what you're pouring, you're with us right away. So first thing, right off the bat, I want everybody to lift their glass, give a sniff, and give a taste. We're going to do this a few times. I think it's very important tonight. I'm going to lead you through this a few different times during our discussion to taste the wine. And I start to see everybody's already starting to sign on. So we're seeing a lot of people in from Fort Worth and points further north. So the first part of our discussion tonight, Doc, I think we need to talk about the story on the label. So the label, I'm going to grab this bottle again and show you the, me and my inability to find the camera. So that is Rawhide, the Texas Longhorn that Jon and Susie Heaver raised. And it was Susie Heaver a number of years ago who took the picture of Rawhide with her cell phone, and it was a perfect picture. We just absolutely used that exact same picture on the label. So many thanks to the Heavers for sharing us the image of their Longhorn. They've both been ardent supporters of the winery since day one, practically. So cheers to the Heavers, and thanks for the image there.
And I think we want to be sure that Brett Perdue gets credit. This was really his idea, and I think it's one of our very best labels.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But we try not to give Brett too much credit because then he thinks as the general manager he's important and he runs around and stuff. So, but really very important actually. So, Doc, would you tell us a little bit about the origins of Tempranillo?
The origins the origin is long. Tempranillo is the diminutive of temprano, meaning early, describing the fact that this red grape tends to ripen a few weeks earlier than most of the other major vinifera red grapes. It's certainly the noble grape of Spain, probably planted by the Phoenicians somewhere between 1500 all the way down to 300 BC when it was taken over by the Romans on the Iberian Peninsula.
Can I interrupt you right there and ask you, how were those first vintages? How did they taste?
I'm sorry. Are you thinking about my birthday that's coming up? I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I'm going to make gentle fun of you for the next few weeks. Anyway,
made by the Phoenicians, then taken over to some extent by the Greeks, mainly by the Romans, and certainly transferred, probably planted in Argentina in the 16th century by the conquistadores when they arrived. Mm-hmm. Probably escaped into the native Argentine grape population and reemerged as the grape Criolla, which has a very close DNA tie to Syrah. So Syrah has been planted on both sides of the Atlantic for millennia and made into very good wine.
Yeah, that and here in Texas, we've really kind of adopted this grape in the last 25 years. But certainly in the last 15, it's really come to fruition, if you will. So there are a lot of vineyards that grow Tempranillo, and for us, it is a very important grape. We make the reserve Tempranillo as well as our regular Tempranillo. So we have two different Tempranillos. The regular Tempranillo uses some of the same vineyards that the reserve has, but the reserve is cut down to 3 vineyards really. So the Wilmeth, the Diamante Doble vineyard, Six Hearts, and of course the Farmhouse vineyard. And for those of you who joined us on Wednesday with the Farmhouse crew, they also grow Tempranillo for us as well. And again, Doc, I think because your relationship with Jet goes back quite a ways, would you speak to Jet Wilmeth and his importance to our program?
When Lewis and Clark were being prepared for the expedition in 1803 by Jefferson, among other things, instructed them in some of the Welsh dialects, because a Welsh priest with a boatload of Welshmen left Wales sometime around 1200 and was never seen again. And Jefferson thought it was possible they would turn up on his expedition to the West Coast. When I met Jet Wilmeth, when I met Jet, he notified me he was Welsh, and I knew immediately this was who Jefferson was looking for. Don't you think?
Well, I don't know. Did you guys find him during the expedition?
Thank you. At any rate, I think Jet is one of the great planters in the Texas High Plains,
Yes.
and has a vineyard that has produced some of the very best fruit to be made that we've ever made into wine, including his Cabernet and his Merlot and now this wonderful example of Tempranillo. So the thing when you have a tour of Jet's vineyard, Jet puts you in his very large pickup truck and drives 60 miles an hour down the vine rows. So on either side, about a foot off the mirror on each side, are all the fruit that we're counting on. And I say, Jet, why don't you slow down? He said, this is my slow speed. So the tour is usually over pretty quickly. Yes.
Yes, it is. I think the tour is over before it actually starts. Yeah, that man has no fear when he's driving through his vineyard. And it's kind of funny because he just tells you to stick your hand out the window if you want to sample the grapes. And the first time he told me that, I looked at him and I said, are you going to slow down? And he just gave me the look like, why? Anyway, I want everybody to kind of raise their glass again. I was, while you were speaking, and it took another sniff of that. If you've just poured the wine, it's starting to open up. If you've poured it prior, about 10 minutes prior to the broadcast, then it really is opening up right now. And some of the things I'm getting are really deep red fruit, like a really dark red cherry and a little bit of herbaceousness. What are you getting out of it, Doc?
It has some strawberry, it has some tobacco, some vanilla, some leather, and an amazing herbal note that kind of blends well with all the other fruit notes.
Yeah, I've always liked this, the Tempranillos that we've done in Texas, especially. I've noticed that there is a lot of herbaceousness there, which later on we'll talk about the food that we like with it. But that herbaceousness to me is very important. It extends from almost like thyme and tarragon all the way down to a almost like cedar-like edge to it. It can. So after the other vineyard that we need to mention too, very important for our reserve, is the Six Hearts vineyard. The Judge and Judge Hart, wonderful folks up there on the High Plains. They grow Touriga Nacional, which is a Portuguese varietal, and of course in Portugal they also grow Tempranillo there. They call it Tinto Ruiz, but the Portuguese varietal Touriga Nacional is an extraordinarily dark grape. It's a black grape like Tempranillo. But we've put 15% of this blend is Touriga Nacional, which really brings those darker fruit notes forward with the Tempranillo. So for those of you who are interested, It's about 47. I took a cheat sheet and had to write it down. And again, thank you to Rachel, who we called on the phone, and because I could not remember for the life of me the exact percentage. So she forwarded it on to us. And for those of you who don't know, Rachel is our assistant winemaker, and is somebody I love to tease greatly, but we really could not function without her. She's absolutely fantastic. So it's 47% Wilmoth Vineyards, the Tempranillo, 38% Farmhouse Tempranillo, and roughly 15% of the Touriga Nacional is the blend for this wine.
You know, apparently, John, the Tempranillo ages very well. The famous vintage, the famous Roman vintage, was 121 BC.
God, how was it?
It was.
I'm getting you back to the straws.
Anyway, called the Opimian vintage, John, for your information. And it was probably drunk just prior to the explosion of Pompeii by Pliny the Elder, who made some notes about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it loves this grape loves the chalky soil of Ribera del Duero, an area very similar to the many of the Texas viticulture regions. So I'm not surprised that it's doing so well here.
Yeah, and it really does very well all the way down into Andalusia too, down to the southern part of the state, which it tells us, it very importantly tells us that it does well here in the heat, in our hopefully drier climate. But it does not doesn't seem to have the same issues in a more humid climate that some of the other vinifera do. So that's always very helpful. And like you said earlier, it does ripen up much earlier than the rest of the reds. So we're making the Tempranillo from the high plains while we're still into the whites as well. So we do have a little bit of crossover there, which is kind of interesting for me that we're doing both red and white fermentations on this basically the same week because of Tempranillo. Okay, I want to remind our audience too at home, please start sending your questions in. We're going to get to some questions here in a few minutes. Before we do that, I want two more points I want to hit before we get into the questions are the barrels. So a lot of people have asked us in the past about our barrel program, and this is a perfect wine to discuss our barrel program because we use both American and French oak in this program. And Doc, why do you like the American and why do you like the French oak?
Price.
So you like spending money on that? That's perfect.
I don't know. In some of the American oak, I love the vanilla notes, and I know that the French now also use American oak in many of the wineries that were heretofore 100% French oak. I think it brings some nice things to the final flavor profile.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the French also. So
well, I do too, and I for a kind of a rule of thumb or a shortcut for folks to understand the basic difference between French and American. French oak tends to be more savory characteristics for the wine, and American oak tends to bring sweeter characteristics. Now that's
sweet vanilla. Yeah.
It's not to say it puts sugar in the wine. The sweeter notes of vanilla or more floral characteristics, where the French have much more savory, deeper toasted notes, or even allow some of those herbaceous notes to come forward. That's why in this wine, when you smell it, I just enamored how this is opening up so well tonight. It's just absolutely beautiful. And now I really, really, really just want a nice steak. But with this, the notes here, when I'm talking about those deep red fruit notes, those tend to be accentuated from that vanilla edge from the American oak, and those more savory notes are allowed to come forward with that French oak. Now, American oak tends to be a looser grain, about 12 to 15 growing lines per inch on the oak, which makes it, you're able to get some more toasted notes and oak notes in the wine quicker within the first year, where French oak is a much tighter grain, like we discussed before, about 18 to 22 growth lines per inch. And that allows the wine to sit in the barrel for up to 3 or 4 years if you want to, but certainly a little more than 2 years to allow the characteristic of the wine to age without picking up too much oak character. And that's the primary difference that we're looking at when we're discussing about aging this wine. Okay, so what do you get now, Doc, in the glass? Let's do this one more time before we start talking food.
Well, again, the fruit note, the dark fruit, plum. I always get
Hmm.
some kind of strawberry preserves note, but also tobacco and a little bit of leather, a little bit of a kind of a sweet herbal note.
Yep.
Really, this is really a remarkable flavor profile. This wine is, to my palate, my limited experience, is very much like the Ribera del Duero. And whereas in Spain they really don't blend the Tempranillo very much,
Mhm.
unlike the Rioja, where it's blended with Garnacho. But
Right.
I think this is really a lovely wine. I can see why it was so well received in San Francisco. Congratulations to you, by the way.
Yeah, we did a great job. I think everybody on the team at one point in time or another commented on this when we were first making it all the way through the aging process, uh, what it is, and with the guys, which we haven't done recently, but we have, we've done in the past, we've done what we call Tasty Tuesdays in the cellar, where I get the whole cellar crew together and we go through uh, tasting some of the wines and then doing some evaluation on the wines, and then a little training on the subtleties, the flavors, the faults, as well as the assets to a wine. Okay, so before I get to the first questions, I have to ask Doc, what food would you pair with this?
Well,
You personally.
I want to tell you about a day in November in Spain in the Ribera del Duero.
Was
We were
this
driving with Tom and Lisa Perini.
was
Uh,
this before or after the Romans took over?
slightly after, and we were trying to. We were in a very small town that had a well-known restaurant, at least one cited in our guidebook, and it was Sunday. It was noon. No one was on the street. It was raining. It was cold. It was about 38 degrees. No cars, no traffic, no one standing around trying to find this place. We finally found a number on a door. So I said, wait, I'll go up. I knocked. I opened the door. And inside must have been 100 people with an open brazier and cabrito. And I asked in my Spanish, I said, is this the restaurant? Is this open? Sure. Come on in. And so we had one of the most memorable meals of freshly cooked cabrito with Tempranillo. That will always be my favorite pairing.
That's fantastic. I I have to get away from Texas barbecue with this wine, and I honestly, uh, two things that I've had with this wine that I've very much enjoyed. One, we did a glazed salmon at home on the grill, which any
Uh-huh.
excuse to fire up the barbecue grill for me. And we did a nice glazed salmon, which paired very well with this wine. The other thing, straight off the bat, is just a very simple steak. Nothing, fancy as far as the way we cook it. It's just grilled, medium rare, with a little salt and pepper, and it was fantastic. But the Tempranillo to me holds up to a lot of smoke. It can hold up to a lot of wonderful cooking too. But anything meaty, be it a meaty fish or a fatty vegetable dish like with avocado or oil in it of any kind, Tempranillo does very well with that.
I,
Um,
la-
uh, yeah.
Yesterday, this wonderful nurse practitioner that I worked with, Petra Gonell, brought to our office a chicken dish that she had made with mushrooms
Oh,
and squash and onions and that had been looked like it had been grilled and broiled. We don't usually drink wine in the office, and we didn't yesterday either. But I thought that what a perfect pairing it would have been for Tempranillo.
oh yeah, absolutely. I forget too, mushrooms. That meatiness of mushroom
Yeah,
does
it
very
would
well.
love the mushrooms. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here, and I'm going to start off with the first one, which I really like. If you'll hold up your glass, Doc, it's germane to the question. So Belinda Hall asks us, why are you drinking from different style of glasses but the same wine? So, this glass, Belinda, is our basic tasting room glass here at Becker Vineyards. It's a nice standard Riedel glass. I think it does very well straight across the board with just about any wine. However, Doc has a slightly different glass, and it does extraordinarily well with this type of red, medium-bodied red wine.
Right.
And
It's
that
kind of
really
Oregon.
allows. I'm sorry.
It's an Oregon Pinot Noir glass.
Right.
And it captures things well. I like
it. It does. And if you notice, Belinda, on the shape of my glass, it's a little softer shoulder. But on Dr. Becker's glass, you'll notice the harsher angle in. That allows for a lot of the volatiles to come up and really concentrate right into the nose. But then each glass is different. When you take a sip, where it hits on your palate is extraordinarily important. That will bring certain flavors forward and mute other things, depending on the type of wine. So that, sorry, I've got to drop my cheat sheet here. The next question is from Fred Cherney. Fred asks us, do you recommend aging this wine and for how long? And I'll defer to you, Doc, for that.
We don't know the answer to those questions, but I can tell you that our first harvest, first vintage was 95. And all of the wines that I've tasted going backward, especially the red wines, have been nothing but better over that short period. Mm-hmm. So we're 20, 25 years down the road, and things are still looking good. So I would think this would last a long time. I think maybe conventional wisdom would be maybe 5 years, but I'll bet you this will be great in 10, 15, or 20 or 25 years if it's sold properly.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go on that side too. I was just thinking in 10 years from now, at around 2027, this wine's probably going to be stellar. Mm-hmm. If it's kept in a cool enough condition. Yeah. So Danielle Sanchez asks, if you're making your perfect cheese board for this Tempranillo, what would you include? What cheeses would you include for this Tempranillo?
Manchego.
Oh, absolutely. Number one right there. Yep.
And then followed by Manchego.
Don't forget the Manchego. That's very important. So Danielle, Manchego is absolutely fantastic, but I would also go out on the limb and say that a really good aged Irish white cheddar would do well here.
Oh boy, yeah. That'd be good.
So Estella Borrego asks, so Dr. Becker, is the Tempranillo all in French oak?
No, I think it's partially French, partially American.
Yeah, it's actually a majority of American oak, Stella, and it's only about 20% French oak and about 80% American. And of that, only about 30% of it was new at the time of vintage. The rest of it was older, two or more years older. So I got a question from Larissa Atkinson Oakert, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, Larissa. Does the style of glass change the notes in the wine? And I think we did answer that. The question is, yes, it does change the notes, not for better or for worse. It just allows certain characteristics to come forward. Best thing you can do is take two different glasses, pour the same wine in it, and then go back and forth. It's a fun experiment. And under normal circumstances, when we're back up in operation, we do a Riedel glass tasting that you can sign up for, and it's fantastic. We have a set of glasses that you'll take with you after it's over, but there's 3 or 4 different glasses that we use, and we go back and forth and show you the different wines and what happens with that. So I really do believe that glassware does make a difference on service. But if you have just an ordinary wine glass and you have a bottle of wine, good company, you don't need anything else either. So keep that in mind. So next question from Ginger Walker. What's the best temp to serve this wine? Doc?
I think the best temperature is sort of just slightly above cellar temperature. So if it comes out at maybe 58 degrees, maybe 65, 68, somewhere in there, 70 maybe.
I'm going to go a little cooler than 70, but I'll agree with you. Like in the low 60s, certainly. I do tend to keep my wines at the same temperature when I'm opening, be they red or white, but I do like Tempranillo slightly warmer. I really like the way it just comes through the glass. So let's do one more cheers here, everybody. Another sip, another cheers before we sign off. We do have a birthday, I think, don't we?
Oh, I was just handed that apparently there's a birthday in Dallas, Joe Callan.
Oh.
Joe, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Joe. We hope to see you again soon. And remember, be careful on your bicycle, buddy. So everyone, if I did not get to your questions, please keep sending them. We're going to do another Q&A right after this, and then we will post that up both on our Facebook stream and our YouTube channel. Also, we have a new lineup of wines for next week. Our next virtual tasting will be Monday the 6th. If you haven't ordered those, please do so. We have on that Monday, we'll be discussing our 2018 Reserve Roussanne. We'll also be continuing tastings 3 times a week while this situation continues for us, give you a little break. Also, I had this brilliant list of wine movies that I wanted to recommend to everybody. Walk in the Clouds, of course, with Keanu Reeves, older movie, but there's another one, and my wife is going to simply shake her head at me because I said I would look it up before I got here, and I forgot to. I will give you the clue, though. It's one of my perennial favorites. It has Rock Hudson and the actress Gene Simmons in it, and it was filmed in the same locations 30 years prior to Walk in the Clouds in Northern California. So it's kind of a fun movie. There are a couple of wine-related movies out there for you guys to enjoy.
Well, Jon, without a doubt, a good year with Russell Crowe.
A good year with Russell Crowe was excellent. Absolutely.
Stop everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
And watch that movie tonight.
Yeah, there was another one with Anthony Quinn taking place in Italy about the town that hides all their wines from the Germans. So it was a great comedy, but during World War II, it was place in World War II. So I wanted to, again, thank everybody. Cheers to everyone. Have a great and glorious weekend. Keep safe out there. And here's to great health and good wine.
Thanks,
good night,
Jon.
everyone.
Good night.